Okay, so in this video I'm going to demonstrate importing from an external system like a web cart a sales order with payment, all inclusive of VAT, and each line has extra charges expressed on it. We can handle up to 4 or 5, I think it's 4 at present, something like carriage or insurance, something like that. Okay, so let's go to Excel. I've got PostTrans loaded, obviously. I'm on the PostTrans 200 toolbar. I'm just going to press the help button to bring up all my examples. I'm just going to type in here payment, and you can see there's one here called File Import, Orders from CSV with payment rounding and etc. So let's just double click on that. That's now going to open that template. And of course, this template comes with PostTrans. Basically, this is like a transaction template. Let's just scroll to the left because it's slightly skewed there. In which case, what happens is PostTrans, when you press the import button, it reads the tags in row 28, which denote what is in each column of data. And the top section here, we can have what we call header tags. So for instance, in D2 here, I'm setting all sales orders to default to warehouse location. I'm also defining 2 additional charges, carriage and air freight. Now, if I then look at the lines, I can see here we've got transaction type set, the account, so they're all going into, say, 2 bucket accounts, cash accounts or whatever, transaction date, the reference, followed by the stock codes. For the items, you can see here the description, the quantity, and how much the customer physically paid for that quantity in column I. Then in column J and K, we can set, say here, £6 for carriage, because we've defined carriage as an additional charge of £6. So as PostTrans processes all the lines, it will add up these additional charges and append them to the bottom of the transaction. There is actually a slight bug in Sage 200 in that we can't add additional items with inclusive VAT. So what it does, it picks the default to the additional charge, the nominal code, and uses that to add a free text item at present. So anyway, the 24 and the 6 obviously add up to £30. We've told it it's tax code 1, so that'll be 20% or 17.5 as it used to be. And the payment method is PayPal, and the payment method is order credit card. We've got in-cell searching in here, so we can actually look that up, but this is going to come from a file anyway, so that'll all be set in your text file. So that's your payment reference for reconciliation. Plus then we've got the delivery address, so that's the customer's delivery address, and it's repeated on each line. PostTrans is then going to work out the VAT and work it all back, so each line, say, equals 30. So whatever each transaction equates to, that's 111.20, the second transaction. Now, so it's the second transaction. How do I know that? Well, as PostTrans goes down, it logically looks at this and says, well, if the transaction type changes, then obviously I'm going to create a different transaction. If the account the count code changes, obviously a new transaction. If the date or the customer reference changes, obviously a new transaction. There is a tag you can actually add to force a new transaction also. Now, when it comes to tax, obviously if it's an export, then it may not have tax on it. The additional charges will be at the tax rate of the additional item set up, but basically if you put a 0 VAT rate against the main item, it will then add the additional charges at 0 VAT because you're obviously exporting. Okay, so yeah, let's just explain, because I think I said that you can change the template quite easily. If I press the tags window up here, you can see here I'm on current tag properties, and you can see here I've got a description of each tag, and I can set its value, and I can turn the in-cell lookup on and off, bits and pieces like that. I can even go to an external website which explains more about that specific tag, or that, the context in which anything's being used. But if I wanted to insert a mapping, then I can just go to an empty column and I can just double click on here, and I can just add something that easily. Let's just delete that for the sake of this demonstration. But I just wanted to say how easy it was to change, and of course you can add formula, so you could import your data into this section of the file, which we'll do in a second, and then add extra mappings here and have formula in them. So you can completely manipulate, say, the order payment method. You could have an if statement or a VLOOKUP to look up the value that Sage 200 wants based on, I don't know, some code that's come from your external system that denotes that. So you can do quite a lot of easy manipulation just using simple Excel functionality and skills. So I think I explained in row 27, these tags here enable you to clear values down. You can also set formulas to be copied down. So if I press the clear button, we should see now that the template gets cleared down, all the formulas are copied down, and etc. So now let's bring in a file, and I'll show you how to set this up when we finish. But effectively all we do is say import that file into column B, and what PostTrans will then do is it will just pop that into B for however long or wide it is and however deep it is. Again, if there was any formula set up here, it would copy them down. So all that's taken care of. Let's try posting the data. So I'm going to press the import button, and in settings we can turn this off, but what it's now doing is connecting to Sage, but it's going to bring up a confirmation screen of the first transaction. Oh, yeah, I failed my validation already. Obviously there's all validation applied as you'd expect according to the user's rights, but basically it's saying my delivery date, because the file is in the past, and Sage 200 does not allow that. So I'm just going to have to go down the spreadsheet and correct that error. And of course, again, this is another great feature of PostTrans, is that you can just edit the data and review it before you actually import into Sage 200. Now let's press the import button again, and you can see there it's read the first two lines. I'm just trying to rearrange it so we can see, which come to £30 gross, because there was a 30 on here, so we're posting £20 of yeah, because it's worked the VAT out, so there's £20 plus £4 VAT, which made 20, and 5 and 1 for the carriage. So we can post that in. Now I could tick this box here, in which case it will proceed to import the whole spreadsheet, but of course then we won't see the details. So I'm just going to OK that, and we should see that's gone in. So now we've created that sales order. Look, Sage 200's written, sorry, PostTrans written the Sage 200 sales order number, which was 5105. And now we've moved on to the second transaction, which is actually a 4-liner. Got 3 stock items and 1 extra line of comment. And you can see here we've got £20, I think £20 worth of oh, it's air freight, isn't it? £20. So it's worked the VAT back. We've got some service items somewhere there. Yeah, 52.80, which is 44 plus £8.80. Anyway, it adds up to £111.20. And of course, you could have actually added carriage in as an extra line. There's, you don't have to have it as extra columns, but if you didn't have this facility and you wanted to express it on each line, it'd be a nightmare to calculate, because you'd have to add a running total and etc. Anyway, I'm just going to post that transaction in. Again, you can see the reference is now 5106, and we're going to have a look at that in a second. And of course, as I scroll down here, you can see we've got a nominal breakdown plus a list of features. I'm just going to press don't ask again. You can see there it's processed the 3 lines, so it now move on and it should process the other 2. You can even get it to email confirmation after processing and all that sort of business. So let's have a look at 5106 in Sage 200. So we can see there the first transaction was for £30. Oh, crumbs, I've got a license warning. And we should be able to see there, yeah, there was £24 and whatever made up the VAT. Anyway, the total was £30, £6 for the carriage. And of course, this second transaction was a little bit more interesting because it was several items on there. There we go, there's the total air freight, the extra line of description. Total air freight added up to £20 inclusive of VAT. Anyway, it came to a total of £111.20. And let's just look at the order payment tab. So here we can see we've paid for the order full. There was £11.20 from a spreadsheet. Online credit card was the payment method, and there was the reference we brought through from the column. Okay, superb. Okay, so I did say I was going to explain a little bit more about how it handles those files. And as I say, all you need to do is say column B, because obviously the data starts at row 30. So PostTrans takes a lot of that complication away from you. So all I've done here is press the Setup button, and I've gone to the File Import tab. And you can see here I've got a B in there, which denotes import the file into B, column B. By default, it's going to use CSV files, but you can set up a fixed length specification here. But so also in here we can say we'll have a particular filter set, so we can set all files beginning with matching a particular file pattern, file name pattern. We can set the directory in which it's going to look for those files, so that would probably be a network directory. And indeed, we can even tell it to move that file on successful import to a different directory, so we don't process it twice. We can also set up a batch file to run before when we press that file button, and we can set it to do it only on the first run. So we could kick off our FTP to maybe pull the files off an external server. We can also skip the first line, and we can set up our text file delimiters and qualifiers and all that sort of business. I hope you see there that takes quite a bit of the complexity out of the import